Wait a second, I have to sign a form just to view a property in Calgary? How does that work? Now, if you are buying a home in the city, you might have realized that agents are asking their clients to sign a buyer representation agreement before even viewing properties. Is it a scam? How does it all work? My name is Ryan Gillard at Real Broker, your Calgary Realtor, and in this video, I'll go over the buyer representation agreement and how it actually might benefit you. Let's go. All right, so what exactly is this buyer representation agreement? So in very simple terms, it's a contract between you and your real estate agent. And it lays out what the agent will do for you, what's expected from you, and how the agent gets paid. So why do we have them? It's very simple. It just lays out what's involved in the relationship, how we get paid again, and it keeps things black and white, and it allows the agent to give you their full commitment. That way they can take you through the entire process and work for your best interests, get you the best price, get you the best terms, and make sure the transaction is as smooth as possible. Now, before we get too into this video here, let's stop for a second. If you are thinking about buying or selling in the Calgary area, I would love to help you out, and you can reach out to me in a variety of different ways. If you go to any YouTube video I have on here and go into the written description, I've got, you can search all properties, instant home evaluations, you can get pre-approved for a mortgage calculator, seller's guide, buyer's guide, relocation guide, off-market properties. Join my newsletter, which I think is quite good. Read client testimonials, stuff like that. If you actually go to my website up here, you go to the About section, you can book a call with me. You can actually send me an email with the Contact Us button. Write what you're thinking. Ask me anything, what your home's worth, any questions about the Calgary market. I'd love to hear from you and help you out. All right, let's get back to the video. So why are realtors asking their clients to sign these now? And if you actually look at it, it's not true. We've had these agreements in Alberta since late 2014 or early 2015. They've been mandatory in Alberta. So it's not a new thing here. But what is happening is in the USA, there's a giant lawsuit right now, and the claim is that realtors are fixing the commission and that we have a monopoly on the industry. Now, I don't believe that's true, but that's what the lawsuit states. And many states are scrambling to enforce these buyer agreements and disclose how they're getting paid to the clients. So it might be new in the USA, but in Alberta, these aren't new, and we've had them for a long time now. And I'll quickly go through the Real Estate Council of Alberta's section on written service agreements to let you know what they say about it. So residential real estate, property management, and mortgage brokers must have these written service agreements when entering into a client relationship. And they help to ensure the role of the licensee is clear. And when clients are better informed, there's less confusion and typically fewer disputes. They help communicate with clients about the relationship between the parties, the services to be provided by the brokerage, the obligations and responsibilities of the parties, consent for collection, use, and distribution of personal information of the client, method of calculation of remuneration or how the licensee will be compensated, basically how we get paid. And this one is for mortgage brokers, consent to obtain a credit report. So in very simple terms, it just lays out the kind of the roles and responsibilities and terms of the relationship. And next up, how does this protect you as a buyer? Now, don't be the buyer that looks at 20 different homes with 20 different agents. You get things mixed up. Keep it all with one source. Just find one good realtor that you like working with and just deal with them and look at all the properties that way. That way they know what you're looking for, they know what you dislike, and you can keep everything at one source. It makes it much easier. And the agreement is good for the buyer as well because it lays out the responsibilities, what the agent owes you and what you owe the agent. It keeps it very simple. And the most important thing though is you have legal protections with this buyer agreement. So every single month, the Real Estate Council of Alberta emails the fines and punishments that happen in the industry. There's all sorts of things that go wrong. Deals blow up, agents don't do what they're supposed to do, and sometimes the buyer is compensated for those errors. So it protects you legally as well. So if you are a buyer, there's nothing wrong with signing these agreements. It actually helps you more than hurts you. And next up, I'll just cover some frequently asked questions that I get quite often. And the big one here is, what happens if someone refuses to sign a buyer agreement? Now, I've never actually had this happen to me, but I believe if it were to happen, you could just treat that buyer as a customer versus a client. Now, I don't know why you'd want that as a buyer, because working with an agent has its benefits. They look after your best interests. They help you analyze pricing issues. They just help you along the process. And If you're treated as a customer, they can't offer you that. So in theory, you could just be a customer versus a client. Next question here. Are written buyer representation agreements mandatory? Now, this is kind of tied into the last question, and the Real Estate Council says yes, they are mandatory if you are buying a property. But again, you can refuse, and you can be treated as a customer. So I don't know if this is entirely correct. But again, that's very rare. Like, why would you want to be treated as a customer versus a client? What is the difference between an exclusive and a non-exclusive buyer representation agreement? The exclusive version, you as the buyer agree to only use the services of that brokerage to represent you and assist you in purchasing a property. I would recommend this one. Again, you don't want to be the buyer that works with 20 different agents viewing all these different properties. You just get it all mixed up, and it's better to have one source and use that person for everything. That's my opinion. In a non-exclusive buyer agreement, you could use the services of multiple brokerages and realtors at the same time. Again, I don't recommend this, but it is an option. Does my buyer agreement have to be exclusive? No, it does not. You can sign non-exclusive or exclusive or as a customer, but I do recommend going the exclusive route. When I agree to enter into a written service agreement, is there a specific form I will be asked to sign as a buyer? Yes, there is. In the next section of this video, I'll go over the exact form, and I'll just break it down and cover it real briefly. So here is an actual buyer agreement that we use in Alberta, and I'll just cover it in real basic terms. So agreement number up here, the brokerage, in this case it will be Real Broker, that's my company name. The buyer's name, search criteria, this would be like condo in Calgary, detached home, townhouse, etc. Market area, Calgary, Airdrie, Strathmore. Our agency relationship, so this is just saying that we appoint Ryan Gillard of Real Broker to represent you. There's always a start time and an end time for contracts. Our responsibilities, this is the overall brokerage responsibilities. So Real Broker is making sure that I do everything correctly. I'm using the right forms, I'm doing my job, I'm representing you fairly. So they're kind of supervising me. And in this section is the designated agent's responsibilities. So these are my responsibilities to you as a buyer. Just the regular kind of salesmanship things, like to look for properties that match your criteria. I'm using all the correct forms, the right processes. I'm just doing everything correctly to summarize it in real easy terms. The designated agent's other services. I've never actually written anything in this section. I just leave it blank. Your responsibilities. So again, this contract lays out the responsibilities of not only the agent, but the customer as well, or the client. And this is pretty generic though. Communicate and cooperate us. Discuss with us any specific information you want about a property. Just let us know like what you're looking for, and cooperate with us so we can get the job done. Very generic stuff. Conflicts of interest. This is more so for listings, but they do have this in the buyer agreement as well. For example, if I list a property, I'm representing the seller, and I can show the property, but if there's a buyer that wants to view the property, sure, I can view it. But if they also want me to represent them, now I have a conflict of interest because I can't represent both the buyer and the seller at the same time. In many provinces in Canada, this is actually banned. We call it double ending. We can't actually do that. In Alberta, we can, but I have to have the buyer's and the seller's permission to do so, and I have to act fairly to both parties. So every year I do some of these, and it's no problem the way that I see it, but you just have to make sure that everyone is looked after, and you're not favoring one party, and you're just being fair and honest to everybody. And the next section here is the commission, our fee. So typically in Alberta, the fee is paid by the seller, and you'll see it directly on the MLS form what the commission amount is. And for the most part, you see 3.5% of the first 100,000 and 1.5% of the balance. So we write that figure right here. Our fee is 3.5%, first 100K, and 1.5% of the balance. And sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a bit lower. But for the most part, that's what you see in Alberta. And you might also want to charge a retainer. I've never done this myself, but maybe you're doing extraordinary things for the buyer and it's costly and you're charging them a retainer. That retainer would go right here in this section. And basically it's just saying you pay our fee if you buy a property and it fits the criteria of this buyer agreement and the sale closes, the fee is negotiable. The fee is not negotiable. The fee is paid out. Now, there's a bunch of other terms in here. I'm not going to get into it and bore you, but there's little things like if we exclude a certain property from this agreement, the fee wouldn't apply, just stuff like that. A big one here is if the buyer wants to use our services, like my expectation is I get paid the 3.5, 1.5, but sometimes that buyer will want to see a property that's not paying any commission. Maybe it's a discount company or a for sale by owner. And that's when this can get a bit tricky because they might want to use our services, but there's no commission. So in this case, we have to ask the buyer, are you okay paying the commission? Now, I've never heard a buyer say, yes, I don't mind paying the commission, but it must happen. And this is why I would not be a for sale by owner in Calgary, because we ask buyers questions like this. Are you okay seeing properties where there's no commission and you're okay paying the difference? They always say no. And this gives you legal guidance not to show for sale by owner properties because there's no commission. So stuff like that does pop up, and that's why it's good to have these conversations with buyers to see if they're interested in stuff like that. I'll just skip over here. Personal confidential information. Basically, I don't share your information with anybody, and this is ongoing after the contract ends, which is this section right over here. So there's no reason for me to share your information with anybody except for the management in my office, but no other reasons that I can think of. Audio and video recordings and photography. You acknowledge that properties that you might view might have active cameras or other live recording devices, and they might be recording us, and they might be recording what you say. So you can't hold us liable if that happens, because sometimes we have no idea it's happening. So it's always a good idea when you're in properties not to discuss pricing or strategy because they could be listening. Indemnification. This just means that if all claims and legal actions that arise from any consents or acknowledgments from you in this agreement, that we can't be held liable for it. I find this is more the case for listings. Like if the seller tells you that the control panel is fine, someone touches it and they get zapped, I can't be held liable because I'm taking your advice or word on something. Additional terms. I don't think I've had to use this for a buyer agreement. For listing contracts, yes, but not for the buyer agreement. Usually just blank. Early end to this agreement, if you buy a property, if our company goes bankrupt, I've never actually had to terminate one, but there is a termination agreement that the buyer and the brokerage sign. They're very easy, so you could get out that way. Other details about this agreement. Just very generic stuff, like any changes to this agreement must be in writing, stuff like that. Buyer acknowledgement, you've read the guide, you've received the guide. Very basic terms like that. Contact information, signatures, and that's it. If you want a copy of this buyer agreement to see what you're getting yourself into, just send me an email or text. I can easily give you a copy, and I'll probably put a link in the written description as well. All right, we're done here. That's the buyer agreement summarized. I hope it made sense. But if you have some questions about it and you are thinking about buying a home, selling a home, relocating, or just some general real estate questions, please give me a call. I'm easy to get in touch with. Call, text, email, comment. You can check out my links in the written description, and I will see you on the next video.